It's the second hour of the closing bell with Kelly Evans. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Bill, and welcome to the closing bell, everybody. Another incredible day down here at the New York Stock Exchange. Another triple-digit move in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, going off with a decline of 331 points, or almost 2%. In fact, the other major averages hitting that 2% mark, with the S&P giving up 40 points. It's just about its worst day since early February. In fact, the very day Janet Yellen took office, that was the other day we saw a decline of 40 points on the S&P. The NASDAQ down 90. The Russell 2000 hit hard as well. Let's bring in our panel. And as Bill said, first, let's try to make sense of the trading day. Andrew Stoltmann joins us from Stoltmann Law Offices. Knowing that makes this all so confusing. Look at the jobless claims number today. Incredibly strong. And I understand that that has a lot to do with their, we've already had quite a few layoffs, so maybe there just isn't a lot of supply left to go to that unemployment line. Fine, but we've added over 2 million jobs in the U.S. in the last year. That's one of the strongest periods we've had since, Andrew, there is just some genuinely strong economic data here.
There is, but it's kind of the perfect storm right now in terms of uncertainty. I mean, you have geopolitical risk in Ukraine. You got the Ebola concerns. You got earnings coming up. It's kind of the perfect market for this level of uncertainty. But Kelly, I think everybody just needs to take a deep breath. I mean, if you take a look at the Ebola virus, 36,000 people a year in the United States die from the flu. 8,000 people globally have the Ebola virus. 4,000 have died. We can take common sense precautions without shutting down this entire country and without the markets going into an absolute crazy gyration.
What do you think it's going to take in terms of a response here then?
I think companies, for example, have to acknowledge the fact that they've used money to prop up their stocks. So we know that. They have to start thinking about investing. The jobs that we are getting right now, they're low-paying jobs. They're not increasing the average wage, which means people can't go out and buy things. Consumers can't grow. The confidence will go down, and there's a ton of debt out there that's also going to have problems that are going to make the mortgage crisis, which was one sector, look like a component of what could be a 10-year crisis.
Well, I'm encouraged now.
It's very ugly.
Yeah, I mean, we're still bailing out. We're still bailing out of 2008. We haven't completely got over that, and it's going to be. Europe obviously has to get their house in order before the rest of the economy gets in shape. The world economy, we'll see. Kelly. AIG has nobody to blame but itself. AIG put itself in that situation that required a $182 billion taxpayer bailout. Now, believe me, the federal government didn't want to put $182 billion of taxpayer money at risk. Okay, and so for AIG and Mr. Greenberg to now come and say, gee, these terms are too onerous, that's on them. Their executives shouldn't have gotten them in.
Process.
Well, absolutely follow due process, but if you didn't give them this money, they're gone, and God only knows what would have happened to the economy. So for them now to be complaining about this, I just think is...
I agree on the complaint, and there should have been better process. In general, there should have been more transparency, more rigorous process for all of what happened during the bailout. But the reality was AIG was being downgraded. Because it was downgraded, it could not insure all of the contracts it had with the largest banks in the country and their codependent banks and partners internationally. And the first chunk of money that went to AIG basically went to pay off the margin calls to these banks. So it was really a funneling. It was a funneling to the banks. That should have been considered better. The whole thing should have been considered better.
That is the point. In my view, AIG first intuitively and then by plan was the core to distribute money to all the spokes. So everybody got money through AIG. That doesn't invalidate. Less money would have been required if the terms of payout had been different. And it's whatever the necessity, that didn't imply a 14. What should have the interest rate been? 20?
It should have been something punitive as a moral hazard to make certain companies like AIG don't engage in this sort of reckless activity that got them into this position in the first place. I guess the only question I have is, what's AIG saying then? That the terms were too onerous? We still needed the money because we couldn't make good on our debts. It's just the terms are too onerous. I think the lawsuit is frivolous, but the federal judge will decide.
Interest rate had nothing to do with saving the system.
Nothing. Exactly.
Okay, interest rate was a political judgment, in my view, before the election for Congress and the politics.
And if it was supposed to be
after the election got 8%.
What was the alternative? What was the alternative? I mean, should we have simply given them an interest-free loan and said, you guys got in trouble in the first place, but here you go?
Was to say, you know what, Goldman Sachs, you're not going to get 100 cents on the dollar.
But you got to remember this. You got to remember the times when we were on the cusp of a global worldwide depression. The government had to act quickly.
Let's give John the last word here, and then we'll move on.
Did they prevent it?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They prevented a global worldwide depression.
Yeah. We are still in that.
Is such, if I'd like to say respectfully, that is the most fabulous point. Because I believe always that legal and appropriate process is necessary. that governments just can't take arbitrary action under the thing that they save the system, picking winners and losers.
But at that time, I think it's different.
No. And it's clear how many years, 5, 6 years on now, that we're pretty much at square one on all of this.
We're still dealing
John
with
Levitt. And you're so right, Nomi, you're so right. Thank you. Welcome back. A final thought now with our panel on an afternoon where oil went below 84 now, I think, and it's just been on this remarkable slide. What about you, Matt?
Kelly, I want to see the end of the AIG trial. I mean, I'm dying to see what happens. I can't imagine any scenario where AIG ends up prevailing. It's the classic case of the kid who kills both of his parents and then throws himself on the mercy of the court because he's an orphan. It's the ultimate in chutzpah, and I cannot believe this case has even made it through the motions to dismiss and summary judgment.
And he is a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer.